The penthouse overlooking Biscayne Bay had been silent for 2 years. Not the peaceful kind of silence, the suffocating kind that follows tragedy. 3 little girls who once filled the marble halls with laughter now moved like ghosts through their own home, their voices barely whispers, their smiles buried with their mother. Vincenzo Torretti stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching Miami's skyline blur in the distance. At 34, he commanded one of the most powerful Italian crime families on the East Coast, but he couldn't command his daughters to heal. Beatrice, Francesca, and Giulia, his 6-year-old triplets, hadn't truly smiled since the car bomb meant for him took their mother instead. 17 nannies had quit. The latest lasted 3 days before declaring the children unreachable and the house haunted by grief. Vincenzo's jaw clenched as he remembered her words. His daughters weren't broken. They were protecting themselves the only way they knew how. The doorbell echoed through the penthouse. Another nanny, another failure waiting to happen. But when his housekeeper led the young woman into his office, something shifted in the air. She was small but carried herself with quiet strength, dark hair pulled back simply, brown eyes that held both determination and desperation. "Martina Bianchi," she said in accented English, extending her hand. "I'm here about the position." Vincenzo studied her, really looked. There was something different about this one. Something that made him wonder if maybe, just maybe, she might be exactly what his daughters needed. What he didn't know was that she would save them all. Martina's hands trembled slightly as she followed the imposing man through the penthouse that screamed wealth and power. Vincenzo Torretti moved like a predator, 6'4" of controlled danger, in an expensive black suit, the top 4 buttons of his white shirt undone, revealing a glimpse of an intricate tribal tattoo snaking up the left side of his neck. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw clean-shaven and sharp enough to cut glass, but it was his eyes that made her breath catch, storm grey and haunted, in a way that spoke of losses too deep for words. "The children are in the playroom," he said, his voice carrying the faint trace of Italian heritage wrapped in American authority. "They don't engage much with strangers." Martina nodded, her own Italian accent soft but clear. "Children grieve differently than adults, Mr. Torretti. Sometimes silence is their way of protecting what little safety they have left." He stopped walking, turning to study her with those penetrating eyes. "You speak from experience." It wasn't a question, and Martina felt heat rise in her cheeks. She couldn't tell him about her own losses, about why she'd fled Italy with nothing but a suitcase and desperate hope. "I understand loss. Yes, the playroom was a wonderland of toys and books, but it felt hollow. 3 identical little girls sat at separate corners, one drawing with methodical precision, another reading silently, the third simply staring out the window at the Miami skyline. They were beautiful, with their father's dark hair and what must have been their mother's delicate features, but their eyes held an emptiness that broke Martina's heart. "Beatrice, Francesca, Giulia," Vincenzo said softly. "This is Martina. She's going to be staying with us for a while." 3 pairs of dark eyes looked up at her with polite disinterest before returning to their activities. No smiles, no curiosity, no spark of childhood wonder. Just acceptance that another adult had entered their world and would inevitably leave it. Martina knelt down to their level, speaking in gentle Italian. "Ciao bambine, che belle che siete." "Hello, little ones. How beautiful you are." Francesca's head snapped up, surprise flickering across her features. It was the first real emotion Martina had seen from any of them. "You speak Italian," Beatrice said quietly, also in Italian, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sì, sono italiana, from Tuscany." Martina smiled softly. "Your papa told me you might like someone who understands la bella lingua." Giulia, the one by the window, turned around completely now. "Mama spoke Italian with us," she said, her voice so small it was almost lost in the vast room. Martina felt Vincenzo tense behind her, but she kept her focus on the girls. She must have had a beautiful voice. "Would you like to tell me about her sometime?" The question hung in the air like a bridge, offered but not demanded, available when they were ready to cross it. "Maybe," Francesca whispered. And it was the first maybe Vincenzo had heard from his daughters in 2 years. Over the next few hours, Martina moved through the penthouse like she belonged there, learning routines and observing dynamics. The girls were polite but distant, well-behaved but joyless. They ate their lunch in silence, played separately, and spoke only when directly addressed. But Martina noticed things others had missed. How Beatrice's drawings were always of families, complete families with mothers and fathers and children holding hands. How Francesca chose books about adventures and brave princesses, as if searching for stories where people overcame impossible odds. How Julia sat by windows always watching, as if waiting for someone who would never come home. That evening, as she prepared their dinner, Martina began humming an old Italian lullaby her nonna used to sing. She didn't realize she had an audience until she turned and found all 3 girls standing in the kitchen doorway, their eyes wide. "I know that song," Beatrice said softly. "Mama used to sing it." Martina's heart clenched, but she kept her voice gentle. "Would you like to help me cook? In Italy, we believe food tastes better when it's made with love and little hands helping." For the first time since she'd arrived, she saw something that might have been interest flicker across their faces. "Papa doesn't like us in the kitchen," Julia said, glancing nervously toward the hallway. "Then we'll ask Papa if it's okay," Martina said simply. "But I think he might surprise you." When Vincenzo appeared in the kitchen 20 minutes later, he stopped short. His daughters were standing on step stools around the island, their small hands carefully shaping gnocchi under Martina's patient guidance. Flour dusted their dark hair, and for the first time in 2 years they looked like children instead of tiny ghosts. "Papa," Francesca called out, actually excited. "Look, we're making la pasta della nonna." Vincenzo's throat worked as he watched his youngest daughter, the one who barely spoke anymore, chattering in rapid Italian about the proper way to roll the dough. Martina caught his eye over the girls' heads, and something passed between them, understanding, hope, and something more dangerous that neither was ready to name. "It smells like—" he started, then stopped, his voice rough. "Like home," Martina finished softly, and the way he looked at her made her pulse race. Dinner was different that night. The girls actually talked about the gnocchi, about the story Martina had told them about her nonna's kitchen in Tuscany, about whether they could make tiramisu tomorrow. Vincenzo watched it all with an expression of wonder and pain, as if he was seeing his daughters come back to life, but wasn't sure he deserved to witness it. Later, after the girls were in bed, Martina found herself alone with him in his study. He stood by the window again, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his powerful frame silhouetted against the Miami lights. "They haven't talked that much since." He didn't finish the sentence. "Since their mother died," Martina said gently. "Grief isn't linear, Mr. Toretti. Sometimes healing happens in moments we don't expect." He turned to face her, and the intensity in his grey eyes made her breath catch. "Vincenzo," he said. "Call me Vincenzo." "Vincenzo," she repeated, and the way his name sounded in her accented voice seemed to affect him. "Why are you really here, Martina?" he asked, stepping closer. "A woman like you could work anywhere. Why take a job with a man like me?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications she wasn't ready to explore. Because the truth was complicated, she needed this job desperately. But more than that, she was already falling for 3 little girls who needed someone to believe in them again. And maybe, just maybe, she was falling for their father too. "Because sometimes," she said softly, "broken things can be beautiful when they're put back together with the right hands." Vincenzo's eyes darkened, and he took another step closer. For a moment, she thought he might reach for her, might close the distance between them. The air crackled with tension, with possibility, with the dangerous attraction building between a man who'd forgotten how to trust and a woman who was hiding secrets of her own. Then his phone rang, shattering the moment. "Toretti," he answered, his voice instantly cold and professional. As he listened, his expression grew darker. "When?" A pause. "Double the security. No one gets near the house." He hung up and looked at Martina, the vulnerable man from moments before replaced by the dangerous Mafia boss. "There's been a development in my business. You and the girls need to stay inside tomorrow. No exceptions." "Is there danger?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. "There's always danger in my world," he said grimly. "The question is whether I can keep it from touching what matters most." The way he looked at her when he said it made her realize that somehow, in just one day, she'd become part of what mattered to him, and that terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Martina was in the kitchen with the girls, teaching them how to braid bread, when raised voices echoed from Vincenzo's study. Through the partially open door, she caught glimpses of a woman with platinum blonde hair and a designer dress that probably cost more than Martina made in 6 months. "You can't keep hiding them forever, Enzo," the woman was saying, her voice sharp with frustration. "They're Tourette children. They have responsibilities, expectations." "They're 6 years old, Sophia." Vincenzo's voice cut through like ice. "Their only responsibility is to be children. Children who haven't spoken to their own family in 2 years. Your mother is heartbroken. Your sisters want to see their nieces. This isolation isn't healthy." Martina tried to focus on the bread, but Beatrice had gone rigid beside her, her small hands frozen in the dough. "Zia Sophia is here," Julia whispered, and there was something in her voice, not excitement but resignation. "She wants us to come live with Nonna," Francesca added quietly. "She says Papa can't take care of us properly." Martina's heart clenched. "What do you think about that?" "Nonna's house is very quiet," Beatrice said carefully. "Everyone wears black and talks about Mama like she's a saint. They cry a lot. And they don't let us speak English," Julia added. "They say we're forgetting we're Italian." Before Martina could respond, Sophia appeared in the kitchen doorway, her calculating blue eyes taking in the scene. The flour-dusted children, the homemade bread, Martina in her simple jeans and sweater. "So you're the new nanny," Sophia said in English, though her accent was thicker than Vincenzo's. "How long do you think you'll last, a week too?" "Sophia." Vincenzo's voice was a warning as he appeared behind her. "Leave it alone." "I'm just curious about the woman you've entrusted with Isabella's children," Sophia said sweetly, but her eyes were cold. "Tell me, cara mia, what are your qualifications, your references?" Martina felt heat rise in her cheeks, but before she could answer, Francesca stepped forward. "Martina makes the best gnocchi," she said firmly, "and she knows all of Mama's songs, and she doesn't cry when we talk about her. She speaks proper Italian," Beatrice added, moving to stand beside her sister, "not the American kind. And she doesn't try to make us smile when we don't want to," Julia finished, completing their united front. Sophia's perfectly made-up face tightened. Children shouldn't be so attached to the help. The word help was delivered like a slap, and Martina saw Vincenzo's jaw clench dangerously. "Enough," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "You've said what you came to say. Now leave." "This isn't over, Enzo," Sophia said, gathering her purse. "The family has concerns, real concerns about how you're raising these girls." After she left, the kitchen felt heavy with tension. The girls had retreated into themselves again, the progress of the morning evaporating like morning mist. "She's not wrong, you know," Vincenzo said quietly, running a hand through his dark hair. "Maybe they would be better with my mother, safer, more normal." "Is that what you want?" Martina asked, her heart pounding. "To send them away?" He looked at his daughters, who were pretending to focus on their bread but hanging on every word. "I want what's best for them, even if it kills me." "Papa, no," Beatrice whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "Please don't send us away. We'll be good. We'll smile more. We promise." The broken plea from his usually stoic daughter shattered something in Vincenzo's expression. He knelt down, gathering all 3 girls into his arms. "You don't have to promise to smile, Piccole," he said softly. "You just have to promise to keep being exactly who you are, and I promise I'll never send you away, never." Watching them, Martina felt tears prick her own eyes. This man, this dangerous, powerful man, loved his daughters with a fierceness that took her breath away. That afternoon, while the girls napped, Martina found Vincenzo in his study, staring out at the Miami skyline with a glass of whiskey in his hand, despite it being only 3 o'clock. "She's wrong, you know," Martina said softly, entering without invitation. "Your sister-in-law." "Is she?" He didn't turn around. "Look at them, Martina. They're shadows of who they used to be. Maybe they need more than I can give them." "They need time," she said firmly, "and they need to feel safe. Sending them away won't heal them. It'll just teach them that love is conditional." He turned then, his grey eyes searching her face. "You speak like someone who knows." Martina's throat tightened. "My father sent me away when I was 8, after my mother died. He said it was for my own good, that he couldn't take care of me properly. I spent the next 10 years in boarding schools and with relatives, always wondering what I'd done wrong." "Martina." His voice was soft, understanding. "I survived," she continued, stepping closer. "But I never felt truly safe again until—" She stopped, realizing what she'd been about to say. "Until what?" he prompted, moving closer. "Until I came here," she whispered. "Until I found a family that needed me as much as I needed them." They were standing close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of silver in his grey eyes, could smell his cologne mixed with the faint scent of danger that seemed to cling to him. His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing across her skin. "You're not just the nanny anymore, are you?" he said quietly. "No," she breathed. "I don't think I am." He leaned down, and she rose up on her toes, their lips almost touching when— "Papa!" They sprang apart as Giulia's scream echoed through the penthouse. Vincenzo was moving before Martina could blink, his protective instincts overriding everything else. They found Giulia in the living room, pointing at the floor-to-ceiling windows with tears streaming down her face. There, pressed against the glass from the balcony, was a man in black with a camera, taking pictures. "Get down," Vincenzo commanded, his voice deadly calm as he pulled out his phone. "Marco, we have a problem. Someone's on my balcony, 23rd floor." Within minutes, the penthouse was swarming with Vincenzo's men. The photographer was gone, but the message was clear. Someone was watching. Someone knew about the girls, about Martina. "Pack a bag," Vincenzo told her as his security team swept the apartment. "We're leaving. Tonight." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe," he said grimly. "Somewhere they can't find us." As Martina helped the frightened girls pack their things, she couldn't shake the feeling that their peaceful bubble had just burst. Whatever danger Vincenzo had been trying to protect them from had found them. And now she was part of it, whether she wanted to be or not. That night, as they drove through the Miami streets in a convoy of black SUVs, Giulia fell asleep against Martina's shoulder, while Beatrice and Francesca huddled close on either side. In the front seat, Vincenzo spoke in rapid, low Italian to his driver, his voice tense with barely controlled fury. "Where are we going?" Martina asked quietly. "My safe house in the Keys," he replied without turning around. "It's isolated, defensible. We'll be safe there while I figure out who's behind this." "And then what?" He met her eyes in the rearview mirror, and what she saw there made her blood run cold. "Then I remind them why crossing a Toretti is the last mistake they'll ever make." The safe house was a sprawling villa on a private island in the Florida Keys, accessible only by boat and surrounded by crystal-clear water that sparkled like diamonds in the morning sun. Under different circumstances, it would have been paradise. Instead, it felt like a beautiful prison. Martina woke to find the girls already up, standing on the deck and watching dolphins play in the distance. For the first time since the photographer incident, they looked almost peaceful. "They slept through the night," Vincenzo said, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee. "First time in weeks." He looked exhausted, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his white shirt wrinkled. The tribal tattoo on his neck was more visible now, and Martina found herself staring at the intricate pattern, a wolf's head surrounded by geometric designs that spoke of strength and loyalty. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Someone needs to keep watch." His grey eyes scanned the horizon constantly, even in conversation. "My men are good, but when it comes to my daughters—" "You don't trust anyone," she finished. "I trusted someone once," he said quietly. "Isabella went to the market alone because I thought we were safe, because I thought no one would dare touch a Toretti wife." His jaw clenched. I was wrong. Martina's heart ached for him. It wasn't your fault, wasn't it? He turned to face her fully. I brought that life to her. I made her a target. And now my daughters live with the consequences of my choices every day. Before she could respond, Francesca came running over, her dark eyes bright with excitement. Martina, there are fish, big ones. Can we go swimming? After breakfast, Piccola, Martina said, smoothing the little girl's hair. And only if your papa says it's safe. It's safe, Vincenzo said, his expression softening as he looked at his daughter. The water's shallow near the shore and my men have secured the perimeter. As the day progressed, something magical happened. Away from the suffocating atmosphere of the Miami penthouse, away from the memories and expectations, the girls began to emerge from their shells. They built sandcastles with Martina, splashed in the shallow water, and even laughed when a curious pelican tried to steal their lunch. Vincenzo watched it all from the deck, his phone constantly buzzing with updates from his men in Miami. But Martina noticed how his shoulders relaxed slightly each time one of his daughters smiled. You should join us, she called to him as the girls convinced her to help them look for shells. I need to... The phone will still be there in an hour, she interrupted gently. But this moment won't be. For a second, she thought he'd refuse. Then Julia looked up at him with those big dark eyes and said, Please, Papa. Martina says you used to build the best sandcastles in all of Italy. Did she now? Vincenzo raised an eyebrow at Martina, who blushed. I may have embellished slightly, she admitted. 20 minutes later, Vincenzo was on his knees in the sand, his expensive pants rolled up, helping his daughters construct an elaborate castle complete with moats and towers. His laughter, deep and genuine, mixed with theirs, and Martina felt her heart do something dangerous in her chest. This was what they could be, what they could have, if only the world would let them. That evening, after the girls were asleep, Martina found Vincenzo on the deck again, but this time he wasn't watching the horizon. He was watching her through the window as she moved around the kitchen, cleaning up from dinner. You're staring, she said when she joined him outside. You're beautiful, he replied simply, and the honesty in his voice made her breath catch. Vincenzo. I know, he said, moving closer. I know this is complicated. I know I have no right to feel what I'm feeling. You came here to take care of my daughters, not to get involved with a man like me. What kind of man are you? She asked softly. His laugh was bitter. The kind who destroys everything he touches. The kind who gets people killed just by loving them. That's not true, isn't it? He was close enough now that she could see the pain in his eyes, the self-loathing that ate at him. Isabella died because of me. My daughters live in fear because of me, and now you're in danger because I was selfish enough to want you to stay. I chose to stay, Martina said firmly, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because those little girls need someone who believes in them. And because you... She took a shaky breath. Because you make me feel things I never thought I'd feel again. Martina. Her name was a prayer on his lips as he cupped her face in his hands. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. She rose up on her toes, bringing their faces closer. I'm saying that I'm falling in love with you, Vincenzo Torretti. All of you. The father, the man, even the dangerous parts you think make you unworthy of love. This time, when he leaned down to kiss her, nothing interrupted them. His lips were soft but demanding, tasting of whiskey and promises he was afraid to make. She melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. This changes everything, he whispered. I know. I can't lose you too. You won't, she promised, though they both knew it was a promise neither of them could guarantee. His phone buzzed, and they sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Vincenzo's expression darkened as he read the message. What is it? Martina asked, fear creeping into her voice. They found the photographer, he said grimly. He's dead, shot execution style. Martina's blood ran cold. What does that mean? It means someone wanted to send a message, Vincenzo said, already moving toward the house. And it means we're not as safe as I thought." As if summoned by his words, one of his security guards appeared on the deck, his face grim. "Boss, we've got boats approaching from the north, 3 of them moving fast." Vincenzo's transformation was instant and terrifying. The loving father and tender man disappeared, replaced by the cold, calculating Mafia boss who'd built an empire on fear and respect. "Get the girl," he told Martina, his voice deadly calm. "Take them to the safe room, now. Vincenzo, now, Martina." The command brooked no argument. As she ran toward the girl's room, her heart pounding with terror, she could hear Vincenzo shouting orders to his men, the sound of weapons being loaded, the roar of approaching boats getting closer. She woke the girls as gently as she could, but they could sense the danger. Their eyes were wide with fear as she led them to the hidden safe room Vincenzo had shown her on their first day. "What's happening?" Beatrice whispered as Martina locked the reinforced door behind them. "Your papa is keeping us safe," Martina said, pulling all 3 girls into her arms. "Everything's going to be okay." But as the sound of gunfire erupted outside, she wondered if she was lying to them. And if this time, Vincenzo's enemies had finally found a way to destroy everything he loved. The safe room fell silent, except for the girls' frightened breathing and the distant sound of chaos outside. Martina held them close, her own heart hammering as she tried to project calm she didn't feel. "Is Papa going to be okay?" Julia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Your papa is very strong," Martina said softly, stroking her hair, "and he has good men with him." "Like when Mama—" Francesca started, then stopped, her small body trembling. "This is different," Martina said firmly, though she prayed she was right. "This time we're ready." The gunfire outside intensified, then suddenly stopped. In the deafening silence that followed, Martina strained to hear any sign of what was happening. Footsteps, voices, something to tell her if Vincenzo was alive or... She couldn't finish the thought. Then she heard it, Vincenzo's voice, low and furious, speaking rapid Italian. He was alive. Relief flooded through her so powerfully she nearly sobbed. 20 minutes later, there was a specific knock on the safe room door. 3 short, 2 long, 1 short. The code Vincenzo had taught her. "It's me!" His voice came through the reinforced steel. "It's over!" Martina's hands shook as she unlocked the door. Vincenzo stood there, his white shirt torn and stained with blood, his face grim but his eyes soft when he saw his daughters. "Papa." All 3 girls launched themselves at him, and he caught them, holding them tight despite the obvious pain in his movements. "I'm okay, piccole," he murmured, switching to Italian. "Papa is okay." Over their heads, his eyes met Martina's, and she saw the truth there. This wasn't over, this was just the beginning. Later, after the girls were finally asleep, exhausted by fear and adrenaline, Vincenzo found Martina on the deck. She was staring out at the water where the wreckage of one of the attacking boats still smoldered. "How many?" she asked quietly. 7, he replied, his voice emotionless. "All dead. Your men. 2 wounded. They'll live." He moved to stand beside her, and she could see the exhaustion in every line of his body. "I'm sorry you had to see this. Sorry the girls had to experience it." Who were they? Vincenzo was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "The Castellanos, a rival family from New York. They've been trying to move into my territory for months. And now they know the cost of threatening what's mine." His voice was cold, final. "But they also know where to find us. We can't stay here." Martina turned to face him fully. "Where will we go?" "We?" He looked at her with something like surprise. "Martina, after tonight, you have to understand. This is my life. This is what being with me means. Violence, danger, always looking over your shoulder." "I understand perfectly," she said firmly. "The question is, do you want me to leave?" "Want?" He laughed bitterly. "I want to lock you away somewhere safe where no one can ever hurt you. I want to give you a normal life with a normal man who can take you to dinner without checking for snipers first." "That's not what I asked." He stared at her for a long moment, his gray eyes searching her face. "No," he said finally. "I don't want you to leave. God help me. I'm selfish enough to want to keep you, even knowing what it might cost." "Then we figure it out together," she said simply. "It's not that simple, cara mia." The endearment slipped out in Italian, and she felt her heart flutter. "There are things about my world, about what I've done, that you don't know. Things that might change how you feel about me. Try me." He was quiet for a moment, then, "The night Isabella died. I was supposed to be with her. We were going to the market together, but I got a call. Business that couldn't wait. So I sent her alone with just one guard." His voice cracked slightly. "If I had been there, you would have died too," Martina said softly, "and your daughters would have lost both parents. Sometimes I think that would have been better. At least then they wouldn't have to live with a father who's a monster." "You're not a monster," she said fiercely. "You're a man who's made hard choices to protect his family. You're a father who loves his daughters more than his own life. I'm a killer, Martina." His voice was flat, brutal. "I've taken lives with my own hands. I've ordered deaths. I've built my empire on fear and blood. And I'm an illegal immigrant who's been lying to you since the day I arrived," she shot back, her own voice shaking. "My visa expired 6 months ago. I have no legal right to be in this country, let alone caring for your children. If immigration finds me, I'll be deported and I'll never see any of you again." Vincenzo stared at her, shock replacing the self-loathing in his expression. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was terrified you'd send me away," she admitted. "Because I needed this job desperately, and because—" She took a shaky breath. "Because I was already falling in love with 3 little girls who needed me." "Just the girls?" His voice was soft, dangerous. "No," she whispered, "not just the girls." This time when he kissed her it was different. Desperate, claiming, full of all the words they couldn't say. She kissed him back with equal fervor, pouring all her love and fear and hope into the connection between them. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "We're both broken," he said quietly. "Maybe," she agreed, "but maybe broken people can heal each other." "Martina, His phone rang, cutting off whatever he'd been about to say. His expression darkened as he answered. "What?" A pause. "Are you sure?" Another pause, longer this time. "Bring her here. Now." He hung up and looked at Martina with an expression she couldn't read. "What is it?" she asked, fear creeping back into her voice. "My sister-in-law, Sofia," he said grimly. "She's been feeding information to the Castellanos about our location, our security, our routines." Martina felt the blood drain from her face. She's the one who's been trying to get my daughters killed," Vincenzo finished, his voice deadly quiet. "And she's on her way here to explain herself." As if summoned by his words, the sound of a helicopter approached in the distance. Martina watched Vincenzo's face transform into something cold and terrifying. And for the first time since she'd known him, she truly understood what his enemies saw when they crossed him. "Take the girls inside," he said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Lock the door. No matter what you hear, don't come out until I come for you." "Vincenzo!" "Promise me, Martina, promise me you'll keep them safe." Looking into his eyes, she saw not just the dangerous Mafia boss, but the desperate father who'd already lost too much. "I promise." As she hurried inside to wake the girls, she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever happened in the next hour would change everything, and that some betrayals cut so deep, they could never be forgiven. Martina had barely gotten the girls settled in the living room when raised voices erupted from the deck. Through the window, she could see Vincenzo facing off with Sofia, who looked nothing like the polished woman from the penthouse. Her blonde hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, her designer dress wrinkled. "You can't prove anything," Sofia was saying, her voice shrill with desperation. "I don't need to prove anything," Vincenzo replied, his voice deadly calm. "I know." The girls huddled closer to Martina on the couch, their eyes wide with fear. They couldn't understand all the words, but they could feel the danger crackling in the air. "She's scared," Beatrice whispered, watching her aunt through the window. "Good," Francesca said fiercely, surprising everyone with her venom. "She's bad." "Francesca," Martina said gently, but the little girl shook her head. "She is, Martina. She always said mean things about Mama, and she told Nonna that Papa was a bad father who should give us away. Martina's heart clenched. These children had been listening, understanding more than the adults realized. Outside, the confrontation was escalating. "They offered me money," Sophia was saying, tears streaming down her face, "enough to pay off Roberto's gambling debts. I never thought they would actually hurt the children. I thought they just wanted to scare you." "You thought wrong," Vincenzo said, and something in his voice made Martina shiver. "Please, Enzo, I'm family. Isabella was my sister. I loved her too. You loved her so much you helped the people who killed her try to finish the job." The slap echoed across the water. Sophia stumbled backward, holding her cheek, her eyes wide with shock and fear. "You have 30 seconds to tell me everything," Vincenzo said, advancing on her. "Every meeting, every phone call, every piece of information you gave them, and then you're going to disappear. And if I ever see you again, if you ever come near my daughters again, I will forget that you were once family." Sophia broke down completely, sobbing as she confessed to months of betrayal. She'd given the Castellanos their schedules, their security protocols, even the location of the safe house, all for money to cover her husband's debts. Martina felt sick listening to it. This woman had put 3 innocent children at risk for money. "Martina," Julia whispered, tugging on her sleeve. "Why is Zia Sophia crying? How could she explain betrayal to a 6-year-old? How could she make them understand that someone they trusted had tried to hurt them?" "Sometimes adults make very bad choices," she said carefully, "and then they're sad because they can't take them back." "Like when I broke Mama's vase and tried to hide it," Beatrice asked. "Something like that, Piccola, but much worse." Outside, Vincenzo was speaking into his phone, his back to Sophia, who sat crumpled on the deck like a broken doll. When he hung up, he turned back to her. "Marco will take you to the mainland," he said coldly. "You have 24 hours to leave Florida. If you're smart, you'll leave the country. What about Roberto? What about my children? You should have thought about them before you betrayed mine." As Sophia was led away, still sobbing, Vincenzo stood alone on the deck for a long moment. Martina could see the tension in his shoulders, the weight of what he'd just learned. When he finally came inside, his daughters ran to him immediately, sensing his distress. "Is everything okay, Papa?" Francesca asked, wrapping her small arms around his waist. "Everything's fine now," he said, but his voice was rough with emotion. "Zia Sophia won't be visiting anymore." "Good," Julia said firmly. "She made you sad." Vincenzo knelt down to their level, gathering all 3 girls in his arms. "I want you to know that no matter what happens, no matter who tries to hurt us, I will always protect you. Always." "We know, Papa," Beatrice said softly, "and Martina will help you." Over their heads, Vincenzo's eyes met Martina's, and she saw something new there. Not just love or desire, but trust. Complete, absolute trust. "Yes," he said quietly. "Martina will help me." That night, after the girls were finally asleep, Martina found Vincenzo in his study staring at a photo of Isabella. She was beautiful, dark hair, warm brown eyes, a smile that lit up her entire face. "She looks like the girls," Martina said softly. "She was everything good in my world," Vincenzo replied without looking up. "Pure, innocent, untouched by the darkness I live in." "And you think I can't handle that darkness?" He looked up then, his grey eyes searching her face. "I think you're stronger than she was, braver, but I also think you deserve better than a life spent looking over your shoulder." Martina moved closer, her heart pounding. "What if I don't want better? What if I want you exactly as you are? Even knowing what I am, what I've done?" "Especially knowing," she said firmly, "because I've seen you with your daughters. I've seen the man you are when you think no one's watching. You're not just a killer, Vincenzo. You're a protector, a father, a man capable of incredible love. Martina." He stood, moving toward her with predatory grace. "If we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back. You'll be mine completely, and I'll be yours for better or worse." "Is that a threat or a promise?" she asked, tilting her chin up defiantly. Both, he said, and then his mouth was on hers, claiming her with a passion that stole her breath. This kiss was different from the others, deeper, more desperate. Full of promises and declarations neither was quite ready to voice. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. Ti amo, he whispered in Italian. I love you, Martina Bianchi. God help me, I love you. Ti amo anch'io, she whispered back. I love you too. Marry me, he said suddenly, the words tumbling out like he couldn't stop them. I know it's crazy. I know it's too soon, but marry me. Be my wife, be their mother, be my family. Martina's heart stopped. Vincenzo, I can fix your immigration status. I can protect you, provide for you. I can give you everything you've ever wanted. What if all I want is you? She asked softly. You and 3 little girls who've stolen my heart. Then say yes, he breathed. Say yes and let me spend the rest of my life proving that broken people can heal each other. Looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability beneath the strength, the hope beneath the fear, Martina knew there was only one answer she could give. Yes, she whispered, and his smile was brighter than the Miami sun. Yes, Vincenzo Torretti, I'll marry you. When he kissed her this time, it tasted like forever, but as they held each other in the darkness, neither of them noticed the small figure watching from the doorway, dark eyes wide with wonder and joy. Beatrice crept back to her room, her heart full for the first time in 2 years. Tomorrow she would tell her sisters the wonderful secret she'd discovered. They were going to have a new mama. And maybe, just maybe, they could all learn to smile again. 1 year later, the garden of their new home in Coral Gables was alive with laughter and the sound of children playing. Martina stood at the kitchen window, watching Vincenzo chase his daughters around the pool while they shrieked with delight, their joy infectious and complete. So much had changed in the year since that terrifying night at the safe house. The Castellano family had been dealt with permanently, their threat eliminated. Sofia had disappeared to somewhere in Europe, never to return, and Martina had become Mrs. Torretti in a small ceremony surrounded by Vincenzo's family, the ones who truly mattered. "Mama!" Julia called out, running toward the house with wet hair streaming behind her. "Papa says we can have gelato if you say it's okay." Mama. The word still made Martina's heart skip a beat every time she heard it. The girls had started calling her that 3 months after the engagement, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as they realized she wasn't going anywhere. "After dinner," Martina called back, smiling at her daughter's dramatic pout. Her daughter. Legally, officially, and most importantly, in every way that mattered. "She's got you wrapped around her little finger," Vincenzo said, appearing in the kitchen doorway with Beatrice perched on his shoulders and Francesca clinging to his arm. "Look who's talking," Martina laughed, gesturing to his current situation. "The big bad Mafia boss, conquered by 3 6-year-olds. 7-year-olds? Francesca corrected importantly. "We had our birthday last month, remember?" "How could I forget?" Martina said, pulling her into a hug. "It was the best party ever." It had been too. Their first birthday celebration as a complete family, with homemade cake and Italian songs and more laughter than the house had heard in years. Watching Vincenzo's face as his daughters blew out their candles, seeing the pure joy and gratitude in his expression, had been one of the best moments of Martina's life. "Dinner in 20 minutes, she announced, shooing them all back outside. "And yes, there will be gelato after." As evening fell, and the girls were finally tucked into bed, after 3 stories, 2 glasses of water, and countless hugs, Martina found herself on the deck with Vincenzo, watching the Miami skyline twinkle in the distance. "Any regrets?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "About what?" "About choosing this life, this chaos, me." Martina turned in his arms, studying his face in the moonlight. He was still the most beautiful man she'd ever seen, but more than that, he was hers, completely, utterly, forever hers. "Never," she said firmly. "Not for a single second. Even when I have to travel for business? Even when there are security protocols and bodyguards and—" She silenced him with a kiss, pouring all her love and certainty into the connection between them. Especially then, she said against his lips, because it means you're being careful. It means you're coming home to us. Always, he promised, his voice rough with emotion. No matter what happens, I will always come home to you. From inside the house came the sound of small feet pattering across the floor, followed by whispered giggles. They're supposed to be asleep, Vincenzo said, but his tone was fond rather than stern. They're excited about tomorrow, Martina replied. First day of second grade. Are you nervous about them being away from the house? Martina considered the question. A year ago, the thought of the girls being anywhere she couldn't see them would have terrified her, but they'd all grown stronger, more confident. The girls had learned to trust again, to believe in their safety and security. A little, she admitted, but they're ready. We're all ready. Mrs. Toretti, Vincenzo said, his voice taking on a formal tone that made her laugh. Yes, Mr. Toretti. Have I mentioned lately that I love you? Only about 50 times today, she said, grinning, but I don't mind hearing it again. Ti amo, cara mia, more than life itself. Ti amo anch'io, she replied, the Italian words flowing naturally now, forever and always. As they stood there in the moonlight, holding each other close, the sound of their daughter's laughter drifting from inside the house, Martina reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She'd come to Miami desperate and alone, seeking nothing more than a job to survive. Instead, she'd found a family. She'd found love. She'd found home. And most importantly, she'd helped 3 little girls remember how to smile again. Inside the house, Beatrice, Francesca, and Giulia were indeed supposed to be sleeping. Instead, they were huddled together in Giulia's room, whispering excitedly about their new teacher, their new classmates, and the lunch Mama had promised to pack for them. Do you think the other kids will believe us when we tell them about Papa? Francesca asked. About what? Beatrice replied. That he's not scary anymore. That he laughs and plays games and makes funny voices when he reads stories. He was never scary to us, Giulia said thoughtfully. He was just sad. But he's not sad anymore, Beatrice said with satisfaction, because Mama made him happy again. She made all of us happy again, Francesca added. Do you think Mama Isabella would like her? Giulia asked quietly. The question hung in the air for a moment. They still talked about their birth mother sometimes, keeping her memory alive with stories and photos. But the sharp pain of her loss had softened into something gentler. Love and remembrance without the crushing weight of grief. I think she would love her, Beatrice said finally, because Mama Martina loves us the way Mama Isabella did, completely. And she loves Papa too, Francesca added. You can see it in her eyes when she looks at him. Like in the fairy tales, Giulia said dreamily. True love. Better than fairy tales, Beatrice corrected, because it's real. Outside on the deck, Vincenzo and Martina had no idea their daughters were awake, discussing the love story that had transformed their lives. They were too busy writing the next chapter of that story, planning for a future filled with birthday parties and school plays and family vacations. A future where broken hearts could heal, where love could conquer even the darkest circumstances, and where 3 little girls who had forgotten how to smile could fill their home with laughter once again. As Martina had learned, sometimes the most beautiful families weren't born. They were chosen, built with patience and love, and the courage to believe in second chances. And sometimes, just sometimes, fairy tales did come true, even for Mafia bosses and the brave women who dared to love them. The end.